Before we get into today's conversation, I want to invite you into a couple of ways to go deeper with this work. If you've been listening to Life After Trauma and you're feeling ready for more personal support, I offer one on one guided sessions to help you reconnect with yourself, build inner safety, and begin moving out of survival mode in a way that feels grounded and compassionate. And if you'd love a softer entry point, my next Rest and Reset at Home is happening live on June 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a 1 hour guided experience with meditation, journaling, reflection, and optional sharing designed to help you slow down, come back to your body, and give your nervous system a place to exhale. Today's episode is a conversation about what becomes possible after survival ends. By listening to this episode, you'll be invited to look beyond the survival story and into the return of your voice, your intuition, your self-trust, and a life that finally begins to feel like your own. My guest today is Kristen Crabtree. Kristen is an author, certified divorce coach, and creator of Paramour Paradox, a self-recovery ecosystem that helps people excavate the truth of who they are beneath the roles, patterns, and adaptations they've lived inside. After surviving a 22-year psychologically abusive marriage, Kristen began rebuilding her life by remembering her own truth one layer at a time. Her work now explores identity, self-trust, alignment, and what it means to come home to yourself after years of living in survival. This is such a beautiful and expansive conversation, and I'm so glad you're here for it. Hi, Kristen. Welcome to Life After Trauma. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Hi, Jess. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for today's conversation because we're not just talking about what it takes to leave survival behind. We're talking about what happens after, the part where you begin realizing how much of who you thought you were may have been adaptation, conditioning, or protection. And then slowly, sometimes surprisingly, you start hearing your own voice again. So I want to begin there. You describe your work as self-recovery, not self-help. And what I find so powerful about that is the idea that healing isn't always about becoming someone new, but excavating the self that got buried beneath the survival. When you look back on your own life, what parts of you do you now recognize were never actually you, but were adaptations you needed in order to stay safe?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do really love that you emphasized that the adaptations are largely there so that we feel safe and loved and accepted and part of community and all of that. Because I think once people start to realize that they don't really know who they are, there can be a tendency to have shame and guilt around that, like, oh, how could I let that happen to me? And recognizing that that is very normal part of being human, I think is a really important part of the healing. And so adapting isn't inherently bad, even once you're like beyond that, so to speak, because we all have to put on masks in different environments. I mean, that's normal. But I think the difference and what is really critical in the healing arena is being able to be aware and intentional with those adaptations. So instead of defaulting to them without even realizing that you're defaulting them, it's being able to say, okay, so I'm going in this environment. So I either need to kind of have a boundary and protect myself this way, or I have to dress up like this, or, whatever. But having it be something you're aware of, intentional with, and so forth. So, in terms of me and in terms of my own adaptations and my own journey, the very short version, which is the version I like to tell these days, not the long one, the very short version of what led me to be so lost was when I was 13, I was sexually assaulted. When I was 15, I was raped. Those two traumas were weaponized against me in a 22-year marriage where I was basically trained to believe that I could only be safe and stable if I was in the marriage. And the way psychological abuse works, some of you unfortunately have intimate personal knowledge of this, but the way psychological abuse works is it's a slow, steady chip, chip, chip. So you don't even know it's happening and then you're gone. Like there's nothing left of you, you know? I've had different kinds of abuse. To me, psychological is kind of the most insidious because you can't see it happening. And so it's so hard to escape something that you can't even see.
Mhm.
So for me, when I started to realize that I had these adaptations, it wasn't until I left the marriage. I didn't leave in a moment of clarity. I didn't leave having a strategy and a plan. I left because I was afraid for my life and not necessarily in the literal way, although I kind of felt like it was a literal way, but more that there was so little of me left that I felt like I was gone, you know, I felt like I had evaporated. So self doubt is kind of the behavioral trait that came out of the adaptations. But what I was adapting away from, I guess, is being too much me.
Mm.
So being too loud, being too
Yeah.
crazy, being too unconventional, being too out there, being too uh, head in the clouds, big thinker, big dreamer. Like all those are things that I was told I shouldn't be. And so
Right.
my adaptations became and looked like self doubt because I just no longer trusted anything that I
Yeah.
thought or said or anything anymore. So that's kind of what that looked like for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing about your past, your experiences. I'm sorry. I know we've all gone through challenging things, but it's still that doesn't make it easier. And
Mm-mm.
but it like shows how strong you are, like to have gone through such traumatic experiences and to have grown through them and be where you are now, able to talk about them. So thank you.
Yes. You're welcome, Jess.
But I have a couple questions. So the first question that is coming to my mind is so I when you were talking about the adaptations, I'm wondering if it's so, like, you know how I feel like we're kind of slightly different depending on who we're with. So, like, I'm one version of me when I'm, like, with my family. I'm another version of me when I'm, like, out with my friends, right? So, is that like, how do you kind of tell the difference between that, which I feel like is pretty normal, and the adaptations that you were kind of talking about?
That's an excellent question, and it's delivered to me in a different way than anybody else has asked it. But so my work, you alluded to this. My work is about excavating your truth, excavating who you really are. And so it's not becoming someone new. It's not, you know, putting some other layer on you. It's peeling away, digging through the dirt, digging through what I call the artifacts to get at what is really you. So once you know what's really you, if you're willing to do it, that should always remain.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that you behave the same in every environment.
Right.
It means that you act in alignment with your truth, that is also in alignment with where the environment you're in or the people that you're with. So, an example that I like to give because I think it makes it really clear how I personally handle this. Again, I'm not prescribing anything to anybody ever. But for me, when I dug down to like my beliefs, my values, my morals, my ethics, my passions, all of that, a couple of things that I learned about me that are like super, super, super important, like the most important things. One of them is community. That's really
Mhm.
important. Having a community, building a community, being within a community. Another thing is respecting the value of life. So, whether that's human life or animal life or plant life, those two things are like really, really important to me. So, what happens sometimes? So, one of my efforts that I do my best to do is to only eat animal meat that is from animals that have been humanely treated in their life and also humanely killed, which is harder to find. So there have been situations when I've like gone over to a friend's house. So remember, community is super important. Animal life is super important. I go over to a friend's house. They have spent hours making this delicious pork roast. I know the pig probably wasn't humanely cared for and humanely killed. So what do I do? Do I stand there and make a stance and go, I'm not eating your meal? No, because that would violate community, right?
Mhm.
So what I have chosen to do in situations like that is I quietly, privately to myself with nobody else knowing, thank the pig, bless the pig,
Mhm.
show gratitude for the pig, make my heart as big as possible, appreciate it, love it, like all that stuff internally with nobody else knowing, while also thanking the host for preparing such an amazing meal for me.
Right.
That is how I manifest being able to live in two different worlds, you know?
Yeah.
So I hope that answered
Yeah.
your question.
It
Yeah.
does, because you're staying in integrity with yourself and your
Yes.
values without it. I don't, the word that's coming to my mind is imposing, but I don't know if that's the right word. But like, yeah, without like conflicting with the other value.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, just finding creative ways of allowing yourself to live authentically even when there's conflicting things going on. And it's not you do the best you can, we're human. It's like, well, whatever, I'll try this and see how this works. But
Of course.
yeah, I mean, I really really do my best to live as authentically, regardless of who I'm talking to. However, that means I no longer speak about my work to my father because he has no clue. I don't even really talk to my mom about it because she turns it all inside out with her own like confusion. But, so I just know who I can talk to about it.
Yeah,
They just
absolutely.
aren't people I share that, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means I ought not to talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. I have another follow-up question on that as well. How can someone begin to tell the difference between who they are and who they became to survive?
Yeah. Mm. So I think a lot of people live according to the myth that things have to be work.
Mm.
Relationships are work. You know, you have to work because you have to earn a living, whatever. If something feels like work, not in alignment with your truth, I mean, honestly, like,
Oof.
if you're in a relationship that is in alignment with who you are, it is not work.
Yeah.
Relationships don't have to be work. They really don't. We're told that, but it's a lie. You don't have to do that, you know? And same thing with a job. It doesn't have how you earn your income, how you earn your money doesn't have to, suck your soul dry. Like it just doesn't. That
Right.
doesn't mean, everything is easy in achieving,
Yeah.
but that is when you know the difference between adaptation and truth and living in alignment with your truth is if things are flowing. People talk about, you get in the flow, but it is true. If life is unfolding pretty peacefully,
Yeah.
then you're living in alignment. And if things are feeling like you're constantly fighting stuff,
Mhm.
there's a disconnect there. So,
I love that, and that rings so true for me. So before I got into the podcasting world and the wellness world, I actually used to work in the legal field, complete opposite. And I can tell you, when I was in that, I did that for a decade. I was a clerk for 10 years, and it constantly, like, in those 10 years, I tried so many different areas of law. I tried so many different law firms. I tried everything because there was never one area that felt like it was fully clicking for me. and it felt like it was literally eating my soul. And yeah, and then I lost my job back in August because it was in real estate law and there just wasn't enough work coming in. And I took the time. I was like, okay, just, you know what? Instead of panicking and rushing back into another legal job, why don't you just pause for a minute? And then that's when I came into like the meditations and all of that. And the difference between the struggle, like, I know that when I was in law, I was in survival mode,
Yeah.
100%, and now it's like, wow, my life, like you said, not every day is perfect, not every day is easy, but my life in general, overall, is very peaceful.
Yep.
Mhm, so I love that, thank you. Something you said really stayed with me, that survivors often don't have the language for manipulation until they're finally free of it. I think that's such an important and under-discussed part of healing because sometimes the clarity comes long after the danger has passed. What do you think has to happen inside a person before they're able to see the truth of what they lived through?
Yeah, for those of you who are listening and not watching, I was like almost banging, well, I was banging my head against the chair because it is like so, you won't get clear first. That just doesn't happen. So, what has to happen, there's, you know, a couple different pieces to this. So, the clarity won't come until you've gotten out of the environment of being chased by the bear because you can't close your eyes and get quiet and internal if you're constantly running from a bear.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm using a metaphor here, but well, hopefully. You do live in Canada, so who knows?
Hopefully.
But
That that is true.
and I had a bear in my yard just last week, so
Oh,
there are real bears, but yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, which is why you kind of have to have that distance and that place of safety before you can take the next steps, which are awareness and curiosity are the two things that I would say. So, unfortunately, what usually happens is a person doesn't get to the point of pushing themselves to find safety until the bear that's been chasing them is finally more scary than the abyss in front of them.
Yeah.
And so they jump into the abyss because they can't face that bear anymore. And it really feels like an abyss. You
Mm,
will not know what you're doing. You will be in a fog. You will be scared. You
yeah.
will have fear, all of that. And it could be well founded. I mean, I don't know your situation. I'm not talking about you, Jess, but I don't know the situation of your listeners. So I'm certainly not going to say, oh, it's really okay, because it may not be okay.
Right.
It really may not be. But a lot of times it takes that point before somebody can jump and then have enough space from the bear to be able to close their eyes, start to get some awareness, and start to have curiosity. So,
Mhm,
curiosity is an ingredient that I don't think many people recognize in the healing field.
mhm,
So, I think a lot of times we take for granted our that our past will be our future, that what other people say about us is true. The behaviors that we've had from survival are who we are rather than adaptations.
mm,
So it takes curiosity. It takes this willingness to say, huh, okay, so it's always been this way, but does it have to always be this way?
yeah,
Huh, people have said this about me, but is that really true? Huh, I've been doing this for 5 decades, but is it my only option? So it takes that spirit of curiosity to really, start to get the clarity and therefore be able to take some steps in a different direction.
yeah, I really like that. I'm wondering, so another follow-up question here. You mentioned the safety part. And I'm wondering if that is more of a physical safety or an inner safety? Both? What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yes, and yes. I mean, so for me, my ex was in law enforcement, retired when I escaped, but in law enforcement. And when I left, I had a lot of fears around my physical safety, but they actually were probably unwarranted. You know, we had weapons in the house, and because I was in such a state of fear, that was an element that was probably not grounded. I mean, truly, but I thought it was real. I mean, I actually called the police in my new town and said, hey, you know, da 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 da. So I had real fears about my physical personal safety, but they probably weren't based in true reality. The internal safety is so much more complicated. When I left, I didn't know what a boundary was. Like, I literally didn't know. Therapists had been telling me since I was 13 when I was assaulted what a boundary is. And I never understood it until I was 55 and a half and moved out and finally was able to understand, like, viscerally what a boundary is. And so, most of the time, if we have been uh, in an environment that is very unsafe, we either have walls up, which are not the same as boundaries,
Mhm.
or we have nothing. And so, yes, it is internal safety and it can be physical safety.
How so since you opened up and shared that you struggled so much with boundaries and that internal safety, how did you find that you were able to get to that place? Like, is there something that you found helped you the most with that?
You know, that's a great question because I know I can pinpoint the moment that I realized that I finally knew what a boundary was. I can pinpoint that. But can I pinpoint what got me there? I don't know. I'll chew on that. But
Yeah.
I do know the moment, and it was a strange moment. My my cat was dying, and I had shared with somebody, actually I think my cat had just passed away at this point. So I had shared with somebody that I had recently met about my cat dying, and they blew up my phone with messages that started off as like sympathy or empathy, but then quickly turned into blowing up my phone with photos of a pet they lost like 20 years prior. And it became very much about them,
Mhm.
which in the past, I would have been like, oh, poor them. And they were writing me things like, I'm sobbing, you know, as I'm, you know, so years before I would have then jumped into caretaker role and empathizer and, you know, but I realized all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be about them.
Mhm.
And they've made it about them.
Yeah.
So there's something here. And that was the first moment that I realized somebody was up against a boundary with me and starting to push into a terrain of they want me to be a caretaker and I'm done with that. I'm taking care of myself.
That's such a powerful moment to realize. It's that feeling of like, this does not feel good. This is
Yes.
feeling very uncomfy.
Yeah.
There's a problem here.
Yep. I had been doing a lot of deep dive work excavating. I had been doing a lot of work on myself, but I'm not sure exactly what the final thing was that helped me understand on a visceral level. Like I felt it in my gut that there was something wrong here.
So you've said that life on the other side has brought clarity, self-connection, inner safety, and joy. I'd love to talk about that joy because I don't think we hear enough about the emotional complexity of things getting better. What did joy feel like when it first started returning? And did any part of you resist it?
Yes, and yes, and yes. So I'll first answer the what it felt like because it was so funny. And this was probably just 6 months ago. I was telling my therapist, yes, I still have a therapist. He's great. I don't need him all the time, but he's great. But I was telling him, you know, I have this weird feeling that I've been having for about a month now. I don't know exactly when it started, but it's just, I don't know, kind of like a calm happiness. And he was like, "You mean peace?" I'm like, "Huh, yeah, I mean peace." But there's a couple things that are interesting about that. So one is the calm happiness. So when I was assaulted at 13. I then was diagnosed. I attempted suicide, was diagnosed as chronically depressed. I was given all sorts of medications. Nothing ever worked. I then went manic, was finally diagnosed as bipolar. So I've always had this since I was diagnosed as bipolar, which was at this point now probably 26 or 27 years ago. I always inspect my moods very carefully. I want to make sure because I've always been really good about taking my medication. And by the way, I'm almost off it now, like legitimately under psychiatric monitoring. I'm almost off
Okay.
of it thanks to meditation and healing. So, anyways, I've always like been very careful to make sure that I really am like when I'm sad, I'm appropriately sad. When I'm happy, I'm appropriately happy. And so my definition of calm happiness was like, I don't want him to think I'm manic, but I am like really happy, but not like crazy happy. Like, so anyways, that's just kind of funny. But resisting it is a fun story too. So I my part of my healing journey was discovering Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And he has a very specific type of meditation that resonated with me. And I like to talk about the meditation thing a little bit because you really do have to have some sort of meditative practice in order to hear who you really are. You have to quiet the brain, quieting the brain, otherwise known as meditation. Now, meditation can take a lot of different forms. And that's important because people wind up doing what they think is meditation. So, for example, sitting cross legged, saying, and trying to quiet your mind, you wind up feeling like a failure in most cases. And so you feel shame or guilt or stupid, which then sends off all kinds of wonderful cortisol and adrenaline drips, which then put you in a state of stress, which is the opposite of what you want from meditation. So I like to share with people that there's so many different ways of achieving that state. You don't have to call it meditation. A practice that I do every day and that I like to share with people because it's so darn easy is it's technically a mindfulness practice, but it's your first bite of food being really conscious of that bite. So even if, you're going through the drive-through, you grab a hamburger at McDonald's, it's unwrapping it with care. It's looking at that patty. It's smelling it, taking your first bite, moving the food around in your mouth, really experiencing the different textures and flavors and then swallowing. And then you can eat the rest of your burger however you want to eat it, whatever. Like it doesn't matter. But that one bite, that one moment of intense attention is meditation. Like it really is. It's meditation. Yay! We can eat a burger and meditate. Love it. But, anyways, so I had tried meditation when I was younger and always felt like a failure. And I stumbled into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He has a very unique type. I'm not necessarily saying you, the listener, need to go to him because, again, there's so many different ways of meditating, but it worked for me at the time. It's what I needed. I went to one of his retreats and he there was a table at the retreat that had bags of words. Okay. So little words. And somebody told me about that and they were like, oh, it was so cool. I pulled out the word and it said mystical. I was like, ooh, I like that word. I want to go pull a word out of the bag. And so I pulled a word out and this is what I got. Peace.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, how boring. Peace. Bleh. I want mystical. I want something exciting. So, and you're only allowed to pull one word a day. So the next day I go back and I'm like, I'm going to get something really juicy and good. And that's what I pulled.
Again.
Peace. There were 30 different words in that bag. I got peace twice. Dag
Okay.
nabbit. So I started meditating. His retreats are like 8 hours of meditating a day.
Oh,
So I started meditating with these in my hand and I had incredible experiences. One of them I wound up nicknaming a joygasm because I was filled with so much like joy and laughter that it really was kind of like an orgasm. It was insane. So,
I'm
yes,
definitely using that term.
joygasm, right? So,
Yes.
yes, I did resist it. I have achieved it unwittingly, and it is amazing. Peace is like, yeah, that's the jam. Yeah, I wasn't looking for it. I didn't think I wanted it, but it's incredible. I am 57 years old, and I find myself literally, people probably have posted this to YouTube, skipping in the street. And by the way, if you're depressed or sad, go skip. It's impossible to be sad if you're skipping. Impossible.
Yep.
Impossible. But yeah, I'll just spontaneously skip.
Or swing. Go on a
Or
swing.
swing. Yep.
Like,
Swings.
it's actually, like, so fun. It brings me
Yep.
back to, like, childhood.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love that. Also, side note, okay, so there was this Threads comment about meditation. Somebody asked what your favorite form of meditation is. And I answered, since I teach meditation, so it's like, okay. Um, and I answered saying that there's many different forms of meditation. And I listed, stuff like even if you're like out gardening or cooking, like anything that connects you back to your body, to your soul is meditation. You would not believe the number of people that came for me in the comment, like, "That is not meditation." I'm like, "That's okay if you don't feel that way." Like,
Yeah. They
I
wanted to keep meditation for themselves. Yeah.
yes, because
Yeah.
everyone was like, "No, if it's anything outside of sitting cross-legged, then it's more considered mindfulness," which I do understand that, but mindfulness is
Is
meditation.
meditation. It is. It's
It
frick.
is, exactly. It's
Yeah.
literally called mindfulness meditation.
Meditation. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
But like
but
Dr. Joe is not a sitting cross-legged thing either. I mean, he has like loud music and, I mean, like totally different than the cross-legged, quiet, inward
yeah,
reflection. He
not what
does
you would
pineal gland activations and
oh,
intense breath work. And I mean, yeah, there's so many. Yeah, to that thread. Yeah.
yeah. I was you know what? I was like, "That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay."
It's
Like, it's
okay.
good to see everybody's opinions
Yep.
here.
Yep.
There were a lot of people that agreed with me, and even some people, which these are the important ones, even some people who almost took it as permission that, like,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, if my comment could help anybody,
Yep.
then
Good
that's
on you, Jess. Good on you.
I'll
Yeah.
take the hate, it's okay.
Yep. Yep. Well, see, that's the thing. If you don't inspire reaction, then you're not really doing things right. Like people really need to love you or hate you.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have people that are like, "Ugh." I don't know because I don't read comments, but I probably do. But it's like I would rather people feel passionately negative or positive about me than just kind of lukewarm.
No, exactly. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Yeah. So, anyway, to wrap this up, what does life after trauma mean to you?
Yeah. Peace, right? Peace, joy, but also, you know, because things aren't always good or easy. I do have to say I live in a state of peace probably 80% of the time, which is pretty amazing, pretty awesome. But yeah, there's that 20%. So what's different about that 20%? What's different is really awareness. Like when I'm behaving wrong or feeling in a way that doesn't make sense or something, I'm aware of it. I don't always know what to do with it. I don't always know what would be right for me or how to fix it or how to change it, but I'm aware that it's happening. And when you're in trauma, you're in such a fog and such a state of fear and self protection and adaptation and fog that you don't get that awareness. So I think for me, the biggest thing is that awareness, it's knowing, yeah, it's knowing what's going on.
Like being able to have awareness and clarity on yourself and like I like to say like coming home to yourself. Is that
Yeah. There's another. there's another answer to that actually that I've been marveling at recently. I just took a trip to the West Coast to visit family and friends, and I was in airports a lot, lots of changing and around people a lot. And I was in awe at how intricate the world is, because when I was in trauma, I never really looked at anything. Like, I could be
Mhm.
in a room of people and not tell you anybody in there because I was just
Yeah.
inward and in this fog. And I was noticing people's expressions, how many gray hairs they had, what they were carrying, what they were wearing, what they were saying, what they were looking like, how they were walking, like just things like that that I just never saw before. So it's also much more intricate. The world is for me. Like it's almost like all of a sudden the lights are on and I can see, you know?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I literally, the way that I describe when I moved from survival mode into presence was like going from black and white to full color.
There you go. Yep.
Yes. That's literally how I describe it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very much feels like that.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you would like to share before we
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are going to be so many haters when I say this, which I don't know why, but I've gotten this reaction to this statement that is like sort of mind-boggling, but it's from people that are still in too deep a state of trauma to really hear it. But
Yeah.
to all you listeners, you are brilliant. You are magnificent. You are amazing. You have just forgotten. You have
Mm.
just forgotten. It's time to remember.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. I love it. I just got chills. I love it. Fantastic. Well, Kristen, this has been absolutely amazing. Can you please let everybody know where they can come and find you? I know you have a book and like a framework that you use to coach, I believe. And
Yes, yes. So there's 2 places I'd like to direct people if you want to chat with me, or if you're interested in a topic I call emotional sobriety, then go to u2.0.com and you can have a free 30-minute chat with me, and really it's not a sales pitch. This is what I'm passionate about, so, you can chat with me. The other thing is if that is not what you're looking for, you can go to see my whole, you called it framework ecosystem, at paramoreparadox.com. And that has my book and my journal and my app and my course and all that stuff.
awesome. Okay. And I will, of course, have everything linked in the show notes.
Thank you.
So, yes. Thank you so much, Kristen. I have really appreciated our time together today.
Likewise, Jess. Thank you for having me.
What really stayed with me from this episode is the idea that healing is not always about becoming someone new. Sometimes it's about remembering who you were before survival taught you to doubt yourself, shrink yourself, or move through life in a fog. So, your reflection question from this episode is: where in my life am I beginning to remember myself again? You can journal with that question, ponder it on a walk, or simply notice what comes up without needing to force an answer right away. And if this episode stirred something in you, I want to invite you into 2 ways to go deeper. I offer one on one guided sessions to support you in reconnecting with yourself, building inner safety, and gently moving out of survival mode in a way that feels grounded and compassionate. And tonight, Tuesday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm hosting Rest and Reset at Home. It's a live online guided experience with meditation, journaling, reflection, and optional sharing. It's a space to slow down, come back to your body, and give your nervous system a place to exhale. You can find the links for both in the show notes. Thank you again for being here. And as always, until next time, take care of your mind, body, and soul.